Okay, guys, good morning to all of you. We have plenty of things to actually discuss. One of them is the rejected ETFs by the Security Exchange Commission, and then we have the Venezuela crisis, the causes where Venezuela is today, the solutions that the nation is actually trying to garner up to actually save the country. So with that, let's start with our discussion. So first, we have the CTO of Repo actually published a report that was yesterday. He said that Repo is more decentralized than any network that is out there. And as you can see, Bitcoin, for example, we have 4 mining powers controlling over 50% of the network. And then you have Ethereum, 2 or 3 mining powers controlling over 58% of the network. So you cannot say that that is decentralized. Why? Because there is an incentive for people to actually come into the space to mine. But when it comes to Ripple, we don't have miners. We simply have validators who could be exchanges, who could be individuals, who could be institutions that just validate institution. There is no incentive to that. So there is no incentive to buy large rings or whatever. So it was a confusion he was actually trying to clear. Why? Because many people are not really educated. If you go on YouTube, oh, Ripple is, or SRP is a centralized currency. This. So there's many things. So it's a confusion they're actually trying to clear up. And this is a report that Flop Pony, one of the guys behind Monero, actually published and said that Dash is quickly running out of money, and that if should the coins go to zero, what is going to happen next? They published a report, and some persons are trying to clear the confusion between that Dash does not have a CEO, rather than Dash has a kind of network, and it has many indictments against the CEO, and it calls for people who have invested in project. And it's like on the centralized road where there are controls, like there is reports, investors have reports, investors have rights to vote out people and all that. So these are some of the many things that they came and they said that he's missing on the lines. As you can see here, that the company has grown the company irresponsible, that the company, they are not delivering on results, marketing is bad, business development is bad, and then that Ryan is not a leader. I did not really want to touch on this. I did not really want to touch on this because that is not my core discussion for today. I will take another live stream to actually discuss more on decentralized systems, their governance, and their sustenance. So I will not really be discussing that. Just take note that these are some of the current developments. Also, with the yesterday live stream, I came and we discussing about CI coin, how CI coin is actually having some internal problems, people failing to deliver on the promised mining ring, and then you have other problems are popping up. You also have the same thing with Tezos having a legal suit. Okay, here is the news that the SEC rejects 9 proposed Bitcoin exchange traded funds, and you can say the Wikileaks trains have been trying to pursue this thing for the past 4 years. And the same report has been given. Why? They say, for example, that the Bitcoin does not have a problem. No, but it says the market is not ready, that the exchanges are not ready. You are hearing about hack. They cited the issue of hack, they started the issue of fraud. They started the issue of market manipulations, and they started a lot of issues that you have a container. It's like a bank. If you are stashing $1 billion in a bank, then you have to have a security that will match $1 billion. It's like your door. There are different kinds of door. In Nigeria, for example, there are people who just have a nail to their door. Some of them just have kind of a simple lock to their door. But if you are if you have billions of dollars, you will not only have a door, you're going to have huge security dogs, dogs that can rip off people. You're going to have top security. You're going to have close circuit cameras. You're going to have anything that has to do with security. So the recession is steady. Not that the market is immature. The platforms handling this trading of whatsoever are not ready. They are not competent. They are not ready. You can see an exchange. Days was hacked yesterday. Millions of naira was actually stolen, and that hack is coming from a code, a bug in the Monero code. Someone actually exploited at the business logic side of it, and there was a hack. So the issue is rested for today. It's called the Venezuela inflation, and we'll be giving some of the insights. So someone said that if you bought $1 million worth of Venezuela currency, the Bolivian, in 2013, 5 years later, that $1 million is worth $3.14. You're talking about an inflation that is hitting 1,000,000%. 1,000,000% inflation. So you're talking about $1 million 2013 is now worth $3.40. It's really a big issue of concern. And this is an article that was actually published on the state of Venezuela. That is, if you want to buy 2.4 kilograms of shaking that costs $2.22, it's going to take you 14.6 million bolivars. What is the next one? A kilogram of tomatoes cost 5 million bolivars. Toilet paper costs 2.6 million bolivar. That is around 40 cents. A bag of sanitary pads costs 3.5 million bolivars. That is 53 cents. A kilogram of meat costs 9.5 million bolivars. That is $1.45. A kilogram of carrots costs 3 million bolivars. That is 48 bolivars. And then the list goes on and on and on and on. Okay, so let's try to uncover the history of Venezuela and how did the crisis start. Okay, one of the things you have to know that Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. Their oil reserves are bigger than that of Saudi Arabia. And that oil was actually discovered in the country in the 10th century. So there were no machineries that people did not know that you can turn this to petrol to kerosene, to this and that. So what were the people using it for? They were using it to light the lamps, and they were using it as a form of medicine. It was in 1922 where the oil were first discovered. When they found one of the oil wells, the oil that was coming out was like a jet. And by 1928, this nation of Bolivia, or of Venezuela, sorry, has become the largest oil exporter in the world. And the country started blossoming. This is a country that has 90% of its exports in oil. That is tragedy. That is what? Tragedy. When you build a foundation, it's like you are building a mighty edifice. A 50 floor building or 100 floor building, and you're using one pillar. And at this you are saying that, let's say 90% of the weight is resting on one pillar. During the Second World War, they were producing 1 million barrels of oil per day. So the economy kept flourishing. But they were doing that at the detriment of other industries. As the export of oil kept increasing, it became very hard to actually export the agricultural goods outside and all that. Even the government was not paying attention to it, and it was no longer feasible for countries to import things from Venezuela. Why? Because their currency was so high, because they were in a boom then. So what actually happened in 1950? The Middle East began exporting oil as well. They discovered oil in the Middle East. They began exporting oil. So what happened? We now have a demand that has not increased, but we have an increasing supply. So you have supply from Africa, you have supply from the Middle East, then you have supply from countries like Kuwait, Iran, and all that, Venezuela. So the fall in oil prices due to high supply and low demand brought the idea of OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So that was how OPEC was actually formed in 1960. So the idea of OPEC was, we're going to put something called the export quotas. So the export quotas is the maximum volume of oil a member country of OPEC is allowed to actually supply for export. So how do we do that? Let's curb the supply, because if there is the prices will increase when demand is greater than supply. So when supply is higher than demand, prices will plummet. So let's put this export quotas. But despite OPEC continuing, we already have the Middle East. The price began to plummet. But however, after the 1970s, we have with like 1973, we have the Arab-Israeli war. Then you have international turmoil and all that. There are many countries, the Arab nations, they were not willing to do business with the US and all that. So that brought a demand for the products coming out from the OPEC countries. So we saw oil prices surging to $37 per barrel. Oh, Venezuela was back again on its feet. The economy was booming and all that. And many of the OPEC members saw this as an opportunity, and they broke their export quotas. So they broke this. Rather than go within the bounds of the export quotas. They took advantage of it, of the current prices, and they exported more than they've already agreed. So what happened? The prices continue to plummet, and then you now have Hugo Chavez coming in power. When he came into power, then you have Hugo Chavez coming into power, and luckily there was huge demand from developing countries like. After some time, the governments began spending the money on social programs. They reduced the cost of drugs, the cost of food, everything was going well and all that. But this government failed to realize that we're doing things that will not help the economy. So some of the times when you're doing things, you have to ask the question, is this thing sustainable in the long term? Hugo Chavez did this to actually appease the poor so that they can seek a re-election. He actually got a re-election, but it did not turn out to be good. The economy kept plummeting. He went to borrow $125 billion, and that did not save the country. So the price has been falling since 2014 up to now. When Hugo Chavez died, he brought in someone called Maduro. So we'll discuss about Maduro and where he has taken Bolivia so far. Now note this, there is huge corruption there is unfriendly business environment, there is crackdown on imports, and there are many things. So who is Maduro? Number one, he's the current president. Another thing again is that 80% of the population want him out. Now, what is he trying to do? When he came into power in 2014, that year, 2/3 of the opposition party had more offices. Sorry, the opposition party had 2/3 of offices in the nation, and he saw that as a threat. So what did he do? He brought something called he wanted to replace the National Assembly with something called the Constituent National Assembly. So what did he do? He brought in some judges, they made the law, they ruled, and he said, we're taking this thing off. Though he forcefully got his way, and since then he has become so authoritarian, even up to today, and the nation continues to plummet. Now here are some statistics you have to know. Now the crime rate in Venezuela has increased since he came into power. Inflation has been skyrocketing since he came into power. And now we have decreasing GDP. The GDP is decreasing like 35%. It's going minus 35% every year. You have the population of Venezuela, 82% of the population are poor. Now here is something that fascinates people. The food supply has been taken over by the military. Now this is something that people don't understand about Venezuela. Before the war, Venezuela currency, they say the Venezuela currency is issued at $1 equals 10 bolivars. That is before the war. But in the black market within Venezuela, it is $1 to over 12,000 bolivar. So why the government and its allies are buying things from other countries at $1 to 10 bolivars? They are buying those things and selling to their people to do. One of them is saying he's going to increase the tax, scrap the current currency, replace it with petrol. So they're scrapping the currency and they're going to replace it with petrol. So this currency will not have from, okay, increasing it means that the minimum wage will be $30. And like someone rightfully told me, he said, when minimum wage in a nation are increased, it does not favor the one who earns the minimum wage. They're not going to increase minimum wage and the price of things are going to remain the same. Everything is going to, it's like equilibrium.